Hi everyone, I'm Liam Eagle. I'm the editor here at the Web Host Industry Review, and I would like to welcome you all to another one of our WHIR webinars. Today's session is called Peek Inside the Next Generation of OpenStack Cloud, and it's going to feature a presentation from Joseph B. George and Steve Croce, both of them from Dell, who is a big contributor to that OpenStack community. So I'll let Joseph and Steve introduce themselves properly in just a moment. But before we go any further, I want to just take care of a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, questions. We're going to save some time at the very end of the session for your questions. However, you can feel free to submit them. Throughout the session, there's a question control panel, or there's a question option within the webinar control panel. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and I can put them to the panelists at the end. As far as actually asking the questions, though, we are going to save that to the end. If you do ask a question and it doesn't get answered because we run out of time or for some other reason, we will have a log of all the questions that were asked, so we can follow up with you after the fact, or somebody from Dell can follow up with you after the fact to answer those questions for you. I guess finally, some contact info for Dell will be on screen during the Q&A period. So if you have something specific you want to ask, outside of the public context of the webinar, you can certainly reach out to them directly. Of course, if there's a slide you want to revisit, or if you want to share the presentation, there will be a video archive after the fact. So that'll be up online early next week at thewhir.com/webinars, and it'll be there alongside of a lot of other great past webinars, including some recent Dell ones. Without further ado, I guess I'd like to turn things over to Joseph, and and he can introduce himself.
Yes, thank you, Liam. So my name is Joseph George, Director of Product Strategy and Marketing for the Cloud and Big Data Solutions team here at Dell. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up next in the Dell OpenStack powered cloud solution, a solution that we've actually taken to market based on the OpenStack cloud technology. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you to everybody that's actually joined the webinar here today. I should note that the Cloud and Big Data Solutions team that I lead does deliver this OpenStack powered cloud solution, as well as a number of other innovative revolutionary solutions like our Apache Hadoop solution, as well as the Crowbar software framework that you may be aware of that's going on here at Dell. Also joining me today is Steve Croce, and I'll let him introduce himself. Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Croce. I am a product planner for the PowerEdge-C marketing team. So PowerEdge-C is just one of the lines of hardware that is supported with the OpenStack powered cloud solution, and we feel it's a good fit. So I thank Joseph for bringing me into the conversation today.
Great, thanks, Steve. So let's talk a little bit about who we are and what we're doing and where we're focused on. One of the things that's important to note is the heritage that we come from, and it's important as I kind of lay the story out. It's important to note, how we got to where we are in the OpenStack solution, and provide some context into some of the objectives and some of the important strategies that we're trying to exhibit here. About 5 years ago or so, Dell, in relationship with our customers, came to the conclusion that there was a need for a specific set of customers. They needed more than off-the-shelf x86 type boxes, and bear with me a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about hardware up front, and we will get to the solution very quickly. But just to provide a little background. From a hardware perspective, we realized there was a certain set of customers that had a specific need when it came to their server technology, more than just off-the-shelf kind of componentry. They had very unique requirements around scale, around density, around power, things like that. And these were traditionally the bigger hyperscale type companies. So think of companies like Facebook, think of companies like Microsoft Azure, companies that required very, very expansive compute requirements. So taking standard servers off the shelf was a little bit was as an okay acceptable route to go, but not necessarily the most optimal route to go. And more often than not in these cases, they knew what type of specs they had in mind to build efficiency into their environment. For environments at that scale, efficiency is very important. Pennies to the dollar make a lot of difference. And so based on that, in our interaction with our customers, Dell decided to form a group called the Dell Data Center Solutions Team, DCS for short. You'll see that acronym throughout the presentation. And that business started by reaching out to these very complex, very unique, very hyperscale customer types, and partnering with them and building custom servers and custom infrastructure for their environment so that they can get maximum efficiency out of the environments they have in place. So high efficiency is what this drove. Now, I mentioned a couple of those customer types. They're big cloud companies, big scale companies. And as we continued to mature as a business in the DCS world, we started to realize that there was only a certain number of customers that we can accommodate in that model. I mean, bear in mind that it was dedicated teams, dedicated engineering core, and obviously the business model made sense in terms of what those customers were willing to invest in order to build the efficiency at scale in their environment. And we realized that in order for Dell to continue to service customers like this, we weren't going to be able to scale in that particular model. What we also learned was that in that DCS classic kind of custom solution business, that there were similarities in some areas of what our customers there were asking for in terms of scale, in terms of density, in terms of power consumption. There were requirements that fell out that said, well, if I look at the whole of these customers, I could probably build a platform that met 80 to 90% of this custom customer's need. And so out of that, out of those learnings, and after working with a number of customers in the big cloud, in the big data space, just very scaled out environments, what came out of it was a server line called PowerEdge-C, and this for C stands for really for cloud optimized. So we were able to develop a server line that focused on all the benefits that came with the learnings we had from these hyperscale environments. So PowerEdge-C was born. So we were now able to meet the needs of a new set of customers that didn't necessarily require extreme custom development for their hardware to be able to maximize efficiency. We were actually able to take those learnings and actually go to a new set of customers and provide them with the level of complexity and technology that met their needs at scale. So it's actually a very nice addition to the PowerEdge portfolio, the PowerEdge-C. And it brought scale to what we were doing in terms of the custom development that was on the classic side. So if we go a little bit further and look at how this business continued to mature, a lot of our customers that were in this space, that were looking for scale, that were looking for density, came to us with the problem that said, love what you're doing with the PowerEdge-C server line. The problem I'm having now is space, and where do we put it? We have data center expansion strategies in place, but we're not able to act on that quick enough. And if you look at a lot of these customer types, speed is really important. Speed to market, speed availability was important. So our crack team, again, put their heads together and came up with the modular data center. And you might hear this referred to as the Dell MDC. And essentially what it is a container that Dell is able to populate with our PowerEdge-C servers and be able to deliver to a customer fully enabled and make as an addition to their existing environment. In fact, you can go and see a very, very cool video that exists on YouTube today that walks through, it's a sped up video of one of our customers, Bing Maps, actually deploying one of these MDCs, and I think it was in 60 days that you actually could go from nothing to a functioning data center. It actually walks through in speed video of how they actually assembled and built this together. It's actually a very nice standalone, built-in cooling and built-in capabilities for efficiency, leveraging the learnings that we had from the classic business and leveraging the innovation and the scale that we get with the PowerEdge-C server line, but now driving new innovation and saying, what's the customer need? What do you, our customers, need? How do we solve that problem? Data center space was one problem that we heard often, and now we've delivered the modular data center to get there. So hopefully you're seeing a progression that's here. Custom innovation with the classic business that led to a scaled business with PowerEdge-C that led to an innovative model that our customers could leverage with the modular data center. And with that, the next step that we saw happen was our solution business that actually came about, the revolutionary solutions business. Now, if you look at Dell as a whole, we're in the solutions business in quite a few spaces. We have relationships with a number of vendors that you would recognize in the virtualization space, in the management space, and they all meet specific needs. But we are finding that in this customer set of customers that are looking for scale, that were looking for to increase margin, where their IT was part of their business, there was a different type of solution that was required, and we refer to them as revolutionary solutions. And revolutionary solutions actually encompass all the learnings that we've had in the Dell DCS business. And although the solutions business is its own business now, separate from DCS, it took a lot of these learnings in terms of customization, scale, innovation, and brings that to our customers. So a lot of these solutions that you'll see are open source based, that are focused on technology savvy customers. And frankly, it actually are technology types like Hadoop, like what we're doing in a DevOps tool called Croce, and what we're doing here in OpenStack. So essentially what conclusion that we came to was, regardless of how great the technology was, the infrastructure was, it doesn't necessarily solve the unique problem of these scale-out applications. And so what we basically pulled together was a strategy around building proven solutions on these components that we knew well. Very simply put, we were able to understand what problems our customers are trying to solve by purchasing our infrastructure solutions, by purchasing our PowerEdge server line, by purchasing our networking solutions and storage solutions. We were able to glean from our customers the use cases that mattered the most and build solutions about it based on that. And that's where you see the evolution of the Dell OpenStack powered cloud solution. So let's talk about that for just a second. Dell's actually been in market for quite some time talking about the OpenStack solution. If we flash back to July 19th of 2010, that was the day the announcement came out around the OpenStack community and it being out there. And Dell was there day one. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the leadership that's there. But over the course of time, and we're coming up on 2 years here this July of when OpenStack actually made its way into the market and became a force in open source cloud, Dell's been there all along the line. And what we have in market today is actually a fantastic solution that's made up of hardware, reference architecture, software from the open source community, as well as software that Dell has developed called Croce, and we'll go into some detail around Croce, as well as services that allow our customers to get deployed very quickly on the OpenStack solution using Croce. So services that come from Dell, so that any questions that a customer may have regarding OpenStack and our solution can actually come straight to Dell. And then we actually have consulting services that are available as well for customers that want to deviate from the reference architecture, that need help in understanding how to actually deploy OpenStack in their environment. We actually have a fantastic solution in market today. It was actually the first solution to come to market around OpenStack, and it's actually been in market since about last July or last August. It's been a fantastic solution to date. It basically takes a look at what OpenStack needs in terms of a hardware, software, and services perspective. So from a hardware perspective, a very deep dive into what is the optimal configuration that OpenStack needs to be able to run it in an environment like this. Now, bear in mind, Dell's actually been very deep into the OpenStack code since it announced. So, as you can imagine, day one of the actual code base was very messy. It was Rackspace and NASA, as most of you know, contributing their two different pieces of code. Rackspace contributing storage code, NASA contributing compute code. And that's what it really was. There wasn't a lot of integration effort that was gone into it. It was just basically, here are the two pieces of code. We put them together. Let's go figure out how to make this work. And it was very messy early on. But Dell's got history since the beginning of testing it on a number of different configuration options, on testing it on a number of different server types, on testing it with a number of different distros of the OpenStack code. And we're leveraging the open source version of it. what we want to take away from it is there's a history that's there. So we've tested and validated designs that this solution represents. That represents the best configurations from Dell's perspective. We've been in there the longest in terms of solutions vendors in this space. We've been there the longest. We've tested with a number of different scenarios. This represents our best architecture for how our customers can run an OpenStack cloud solution. And we have a number of customers in that space today. So if we were to break down the solution a little bit, I mentioned the reference architecture that's based on our PowerEdge-C, our optimized, cloud-optimized server line that maximizes density and scale. And Steve will go into that a little bit later in the conversation here today. Our Crowbar software that is Dell developed, it leverages the Chef configuration management tool from OpsCode, but the actual development is actually done here at Dell. A lot of the teams that work on this, very active in the OpenStack community, very active in the Crowbar community that exists out there, and actually very integrated in what we're doing. And Crowbar essentially allowed customers to get on this brand new emerging technology, very complex, something that takes a long time to do manually, to actually do this very quickly. In fact, you could take a minimum configuration of our solution and get up and running with Crowbar in less than 2 hours, which is unheard of. Leverages a lot of our Dell portfolio in terms of our PowerEdge-C 6100 and our C2100 servers that are Intel-based. Fantastic reference architecture that's proven out to be very strong in the actual field and the actual customer environments. Dell networking capabilities. And then in terms of documentation and what Dell delivers, this is actually very unique as well. We have a fully documented reference architecture that talks through what design decisions we made and why we made some of those decisions, as well as a deployment guide on how it should be deployed and how it can be deployed. So as you can see, it's a full solution. It's not just one piece of it, and then then we expect customers to pick up the rest of it. We have actually done the investment and work to offer our hosting customers a full reference architecture, software that comes from the open source community, software that Dell has developed that originated specifically for OpenStack, and then services from Dell that will allow you to get up and running quickly so that you can find value in getting an OpenStack cloud running into your environment. Let me take a step back and talk a little bit about what Dell's been doing in this space. We obviously, as I mentioned, we've been a supporter of the OpenStack community since day one. It's a very important thing to note. A number of our traditional competitors were not in that space until very much later, until a lot of the questions have been answered. Dell has been in this cloud space, and I'll go back to the heritage that we have in this space. We manage and run some of the biggest clouds that run on our infrastructure today. Some of the biggest clouds in the world run on our technology. So we came into the OpenStack technology discussions very early, but with a background based on real cloud deployments, based on a number of open source cloud technologies, and based on the characteristics we saw in OpenStack, Dell decided to invest day one. It showed a lot of vision. We absolutely were taking a little bit of a chance, but we saw all the right things that were important to a hyperscale environment, specifically in the public cloud space, specifically for customers of ours that are in the hosting space. This made sense as a technology, so we committed day one. In fact, the proof point there is if you actually go and Google the actual press release from July 19th of 2010, the press release that came out will only feature 2 quotes from partners other than Rackspace and NASA, and that is, one is from Citrix and the other one is from Dell, just so that illustrates the level of commitment that we had. And as a result, it's been almost coming up on 2 years. We have been involved in the community. We have been involved in the design summits. Our product teams are integrated with some of the key players like Rackspace that are driving innovation in this space. We've actually delivered solutions to market, as I mentioned, so we're actually gaining actual experience with customers actually deploying this, a number of them in the hosting space. And our reference architectures have been adjusting over time. So we went to market with a reference architecture that makes sense back when we initially launched it. With customer experience, we have We have baked that information back into the architectures, back into the design of the solution, back into features of Crowbar, and we actually have a 1.2 version of Crowbar that's live today. We have a 1.2 version of the reference architecture that actually has baked in some of those learnings. So what you've seen is a rich history of Dell in the OpenStack space. First, taking a very leadership-oriented route in terms of the community and the technology and being first to market with a solution, and then ongoing commitment to it in that we are continuing to invest in OpenStack. We are continuing to be very visible in the community. We're continuing to update and refresh our solution so that we can bake in learnings. And we actually have quite a few, I call them OpenStack celebrities here at Dell that actually are very vocal in the space. A couple of examples would be Rob Hirschfeld, who's one of our lead architects, is very vocal in the OpenStack community. Greg Altos, these are folks that you can actually look at online. Barton George is another one of our advocates here at Dell. Very open, very vocal, very active in the OpenStack arena, which hopefully demonstrates our ongoing leadership and commitment to the OpenStack technology and community as a movement. So I'm going to take a moment and talk a little bit about Crowbar. It's actually a very unique and innovative time here at Dell in that obviously we're reaching out into these emerging technologies like OpenStack, like Hadoop, and we're going in with a very eyes wide open mentality. Let's understand what the technology is, understand how our customers, in the web hosting service provider space in particular, can benefit from this. Let's figure out how we build solutions so that our customers can take advantage of this and get to market very quick. We realize that our customers are out there doing this in a lot of ways, maybe on their own, in skunkwork projects that may be going on, under the covers. We would like to go out there and partner with you and do that. And in that frame of mind, that's where Crowbar actually originated from. The problem, as I mentioned earlier, with OpenStack early was it was so new, it was so raw, that a lot of our customers that wanted to start working on the open source version of it were taking days and weeks of actually installing OpenStack manually. And our engineering teams were actually no different. We were having those same exact problems. So our engineering team approached me and the marketing team and said, we're going to build a tool that will enable this to be much faster, to go from bare metal to a functioning OpenStack cloud very quickly. And fortunately, as it should work in product teams, marketing and engineering worked together and said, look, this is something that our customers could benefit from as well. So we developed what we call the Crowbar software framework. It is absolutely an open source software project today. I'll reference the GitHub link that's there. You can actually go and see development of the Crowbar tool in its openness. It is actually being openly developed in the open on those GitHub sites. We have active communities, partners, a number of vendors that you would recognize, a number of OpenStack-powered cloud solution customers, a number of non-Dell customers that are active in the Crowbar community, working on trying to ensure that that Crowbar can work in their environment. And so we're actually seeing a very thriving community that's happening right now. As I mentioned, open source under the Apache 2.0 license, so very flexible in terms of licensing. Its original use case was to deploy complex technologies like OpenStack and Hadoop in a very short amount of time. In the lab, we've been able to test. We've been able to get deployed a 6-node cluster of 6-node cloud of OpenStack running from bare metal in about 30 minutes. It's actually really great metrics that our engineering team is actually able to produce, and it's designed in a very modular fashion. If I look at and describe how Crowbar is designed, there's a core, and then there are modules, functional modules that exist called bar clamps. Extending that tool metaphor there. The bar clamps are actual functional modules that perform a specific activity. So if we think of OpenStack Nova, which is the compute aspect of OpenStack, there is a bar clamp that is available open source that deploys Nova. If we're looking at Hadoop and we're looking at Cloudera distributed Hadoop, CDH, there is a bar clamp that actually can deploy CDH. and on and on and on. BIOS, RAID, there's a number of things that bar clamps do. We've developed Crowbar in a way that our customers can take the open source components and actually develop their own bar clamps. And we'll talk about a customer that's doing that a little bit later. They can actually develop their own bar clamps. VMware actually went and took our Crowbar technology, and they have actually wrote a bar clamp for Cloud Foundry, their platform as a service solution. And we're seeing customers pick it up. We're seeing partners pick it up and write code and contribute it back. It's a fantastic movement that's happening in terms of innovation here at Dell. So as a kind of a drill down into what it does, the Crowbar tool today can actually do BIOS configuration, automated RAID configuration. It actually does network discovery. It lays down Nagios and Ganglia for monitoring and performance needs. It actually can also sit as a continuous integration engine. So once you've done a full deployment, it actually can sit there in the environment and monitor the environment so that events that occur, negative events that occur, it can actually understand that that's happening and actually kick off activities that will go and get the environment back in order. So it's actually a very powerful tool. Again, there's an open source version that's out there, and for the most part, it is open source. There's one or two things that we're working on with legal to get those open sourced as well. But for the most part, it's fully open sourced. And if you purchase it, if you purchase the Dell OpenStack powered cloud solution, you actually get Crowbar included there, as well as a couple of the pieces that I mentioned that are not yet open sourced. And you can also get full support on Crowbar as a part of that solution purchase. So if you have any questions around Crowbar as a customer, you can actually call the 1-800 Dell support line and get support on Crowbar as well. As a part of the solution, we also have teams that go on site that will actually help you, rack and stack your server environment, actually deploy Crowbar for the first time, and actually train your teams on Crowbar so that you have the flexibility to actually go and leverage Crowbar to your benefit. So what's interesting here is that we've put a solution together around OpenStack that's really unique, leverages OpenStack, open source OpenStack code, leverages the Crowbar software framework that's also open source, and really gives a lot of power to our customers, and specifically for the hosting environment that we're seeing. Specifically, in that case, we see a lot of our customers looking at that as a nice option for them. It gives them the flexibility that they need to be able to go in and make modifications as needed, but still have some of the backing and the best practices that Dell offers, having been in this space for such a long time. A very unique offering in this open source cloud space. So with that, I mentioned that the OpenStack powered cloud solution from Dell is made up of three different parts: the hardware reference architecture, the software componentry that exists from the open source community as well as from Dell, and services across the board. So with that, I'd like to drill down a little bit into the reference architecture that we've developed, as well as some new things that are coming out in this space. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve to talk us through. Steve.
Great. So, in the true spirit of maintaining this as an open cloud platform, all of our tools are fairly open, but to get the hardware decision kind of out of the way for you, we've created a reference architecture that includes the PowerEdge C hardware that I am a product manager for. So, to start with that reference architecture, what it allows you to do is, start with as little as, 3 systems, which will give you, 5 nodes plus a management node. And that'll start you out with 30 terabytes of storage, 40 CPU cores to kind of get you going. And so if you look at the 2 racks on the right, you've got three of those systems on the bottom. That's all you need to get started, plus a switch or 2 at the top. And so, the idea there was get the hardware, give you a stable hardware solution that's been tested and vetted out with the, not only the OpenStack software, but also the Crowbar software that helps deploy and manage as well. However, you can take the base system, the base reference architecture we've created, and scale that out to, to 2 full racks using the same hardware platform, and that will bring you up to 360 terabytes of storage and 480 CPU cores. all of that based on a single flexible platform, so that you don't have to be real specific about how you pick your servers. It's a single server model that will allow you to put your Swift storage and your Nova Compute on the same type of hardware to once again get the hardware out of the way for you and help you get to deploying the cloud. However, when you do want to get more specific on the hardware and have hardware that's focused on on the Nova Compute side, or get hardware that's focused on the Swift storage side, we have systems that are more tailor-made that give you a little bit more storage per core, or a little bit more of core per rack U, when you decide to go down that route. But once again, it's all based off of the same hardware. You can configure it differently, but the idea was we'd like to give you a stable platform to start with that you can build off of, but then give you the options down the road to customize it based on your exact needs. So next, I'd like to talk about the PowerEdge C line, which Joseph touched on earlier, and just talk about a couple points about why we feel PowerEdge C is a good fit, and why the OpenStack solution is running on PowerEdge C. Because once again, as an open solution, there are many different types of hardware you can run this on. We just feel ours is a really good fit. So, first of all, everything we run, we have a large number of Intel Xeon powered solutions. So we feel that that's always been a really good fit within all of our cloud solutions. Some of the things that you see on the right are all kind of a byproduct of this tight integration and our heritage in the data center solutions business. So the high power efficiency, the extreme density, these are all byproducts of what our customers were actually asking for. And what they were asking for is get a lot of the proprietary components, keep everything open source. My software is smart, like a cloud deployment, to route around a failure. I don't need all kinds of redundancy and resiliency at every level of the hardware. I want to handle that in the software layer. That allows us to pull power out of the system. It allows us to pull unnecessary components and features out of the system to give you a denser, more power efficient system. Now, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the reference architecture, you only need about 6 to 8 rack U to start your solution. But once you get larger, you don't want to start outgrowing the rack space you have available, or you don't want to start outgrowing the power envelope you have in your rack. So that's really where the high power efficiency and extreme density comes in. And then once again is our compatibility with open source, and kind of our focus on it has allowed us to fit a little bit better. So the same management tools that are in our OpenStack powered cloud solution are the ones we recommend even outside of cloud on the PowerEdge C hardware. It's where we feel the strong suit of the hardware is, and it's one of those things that has brought data center solutions at Dell and Dell overall to be the #1 density optimized server vendor per IDC. So IDC's metric for the folks in the cloud and web space is the density optimized server. That's an area where we've been #1 a couple quarters in a row now. So it once again comes down to taking the custom designs that we put together for the largest cloud operators and extracting what was useful there to the larger OpenStack audience and making that available, but also working closely with Joseph's team to understand what the needs are. And we did that in our first generation, and as we get into our second generation, we're getting closer and closer to meeting the ideals that they would like to see in an OpenStack capable system. So with that, I'll move on to a system we just announced and will actually be launching in a couple weeks now. You can go order it in a couple weeks now. It's our PowerEdge C6220. This is a continuation of our C6000 series. Our previous generation was the C6100. Both follow a very similar concept. 4 completely unique independent servers in a 2U chassis. All they share is power, cooling, and the actual metal of the chassis. It's available in a 2 or 4 node variant. So in your reference architecture, you'll find the 2-node variant, which allows you to get 2 servers plus a lot of disks, about 12 disks per server in 2U. However, if you'd like to go a little bit more dense with compute, you can add 4 nodes to that. But what we've done in this next generation are all things that are kind of a direct response to questions we've gotten from our customers and feedback we've gotten from our customers on the 6100 design. So, the first piece of it is that we are going through a large generational change from Intel. So we've added their new architecture in the processors, which adds a huge boost in performance, a large increase in number of VMs that you could fit on a node. So once again, allowing you to improve the density of your overall solution. We made it more power efficient. We focused a lot rather than going and completely tearing the platform apart. We really just tweaked and tuned and pulled power out of the system. Once again, allowing you to fit within whatever your rack power or space envelope is. We've made it easier to service, easier to manage. We've continued our dedication to open source. So we're adding new features as we go. You'll start to see some white papers coming from our group shortly on not only some of the more standard Linux distributions that Dell has been supporting for a while, but even some more up and coming Linux distributions. So once again, continuing that dedication to the open source community, and even tweaking things for an OpenStack solution for our Swift focused configurations. We've added the ability to get a little bit more hard drive bandwidth. So just adding that flexibility there. There are some specifications down on the bottom left. I won't dig into all of those, but once again, what you'll see is a comparable set of features to what we had in the 6100, but basically a step up and a tweaking and a tuning to make the system more refined. So next, I'll talk about how we how you can go try it now. So there's a great initiative called trystack.org that we have been a part of. We've donated some systems to that initiative. So that's an area, it's a sandbox area where you can log on, you can get an account, and you can try out OpenStack. And that trystack.org sandbox is running on PowerEdge-C hardware. So you can try it out. You can do your performance profiling. You can start writing your software to be OpenStack compliant for when you're willing to create your own OpenStack cloud. So this is something we're proud of and definitely want you to know is out there. The link you can see is at the right side of the page. So please go there, try it out and see how it'll work for you. So at this point, that's the hardware pitch. I wanted to keep it kind of dense since this is very much a software-based conversation. So I'll hand it back to Joseph now.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And that's actually really important to note. A couple of things that Steve highlighted is, the 6220 was just announced, so that's fresh news. I think just came out earlier this week. But that's a brand new Intel server that we're taking to market. Better performance, and better performance for Swift in terms of OpenStack storage. So very, very cool information there. I did want to highlight to our web hosting customers here that are listening in that we actually have a web hosting company that has deployed the Dell OpenStack powered cloud solution in terms of our hardware array, in terms of our services, and in terms of Crowbar. That company is DreamHost. This is actually an official case study available on Dell.com today. If you actually go to Dell.com/OpenStack. And you'll see a link a little bit later. You can actually read the full case study of what they've actually deployed. But essentially, this is a company that's based out of the California area, and they were looking to provide a cloud platform for their new storage service that they're offering to the public cloud customers. And DreamHost actually is also pretty active in the OpenStack community themselves. But they came to us, and we talked to them about what their objectives were, what they were looking to accomplish. And as a hoster, that the Dell OpenStack Powered Cloud solution made a lot of sense for them in terms of the scale that we can offer, in terms of the hardware itself and the optimized configuration we offered, and Crowbar in particular. I mentioned that Crowbar has this notion of bar clamps, these functional modules. DreamHost actually has been working on a Ceph storage bar clamp that they're actually deploying, and they actually demoed it at a recent design summit that OpenStack, the community, held. And they've actually done a lot in that space already. So they're very active with us, very active in the community. And this is actually a really good model of how a web hoster can benefit from the solution that Dell offers on the OpenStack technology. Essentially, the team at DreamHost felt that a lot of the capabilities that they would have had to do on their own on an open source project was done by Dell, because since we were already doing it, they decided to leverage us, and they've been pretty happy with it since. Hence their willingness to help spread the word around what they're doing and what Dell's doing in this space. Again, if you'd like to learn more in detail what DreamHost was doing and is doing in the Dell OpenStack Power Cloud Solution space, that full case study is actually available on our dell.com/OpenStack site. So kind of in wrap-up, just wanted to kind of highlight a number of the things that we've talked about here today, and really touch on the reasons why we, Dell, are in this space and why it really makes sense in terms of how we're partnering with our web hosting community. We just have, when it comes to experience, we just have a lot of it. As Steve mentioned, IDC put out that report around the actual number of the market share in terms of the hyperscale market. Dell is double what it is of what the number 2 is, and so that really speaks volumes in terms of our experience. I highlighted where we came from in terms of building custom solutions for the biggest cloud providers that are in the world and the biggest hyperscale environments, that led to the design around the PowerEdge-C server line that optimizes efficiency and scale and power consumption, and how it led to an open source OpenStack solution that's built on those key fundamentals. And so when it comes to experience in terms of our infrastructure, as well as experience in OpenStack, again, we are one of the most tenured OpenStack partners that are there in that movement. So when it comes to experience, Dell definitely hits it out of the park. And when it comes to technology, whether it's our PowerEdge-C servers, whether it's our solutions as a whole, or whether it's our tools like Crowbar that we've developed in terms of innovation, Dell is on the cusp. We're right on the cutting edge of trying to build pieces that allow our solutions to be even more powerful to our customers. Things like PowerEdge-C, things like Crowbar, just a few examples of what we've done to date, and hopefully samples of what we will continue to do in terms of innovation. In terms of documentation, I mentioned the reference architectures that detail out the decisions we made, that detail out why we made those decisions, as well as deployment guides for you to leverage in terms of hand-to-hand, step-by-step deployment, as well as services that come from us, from Dell, that allow you to give you that extra help that you need to actually get going very quickly. And speaking of quick, speed is another value that Dell offers here as well. In terms of technology, Crowbar being able to allow you to deploy OpenStack in a matter of hours instead of days or weeks. The ability for our teams to actually come on site and be able to help you deploy this in terms of our supply chain expertise and best practices that we have. Speed and being able to deploy quickly is something that we take a lot of pride in. And then in terms of scope, I mentioned the hardware, software, services angle. If you need help in terms of consulting, if you need help in terms of support, if you're looking for expertise from Dell in terms of the architecture, if you're looking for a partnership with Dell in terms of building bar clamps and working with the Crowbar community that Dell is an active leader and participant in, across the board, Dell has you covered in this space. So where do we go from here? Let's get started. Obviously, there's a lot that we've covered here in terms of the solution, in terms of the hardware. The next step is learn a little bit more. I listed a couple of links here, dell.com/OpenStack to learn more about the solution that we offer, and dell.com/DCS to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in data center solutions. But let's get started now. I encourage you to reach out to the web and learn a little bit more about what we do. And if you've already got a Dell account rep, reach out to them and say, you saw a fantastic webinar that Joseph and Steve put together, and you'd like to learn a little bit more about what Dell is doing in the OpenStack space, and we can get those conversations going. We'd love to be a part of what you'd like to do in the OpenStack space. And with that, I'd like to just say a very big thank you to you for joining today. We're going to take a few minutes to have Q&A, and I'll hand it back over to Liam. And just as a last note, if you have any questions around anything that we talked about here today, the fastest way to probably get some answers, short of your Dell representative, is actually just drop me an email at openstack@dell.com, and we'll get right back to you with some answers there. So with that, Liam, I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, thanks, Joseph. We actually got a few questions from the audience during the presentation, so I'll start just putting those ones to you just now. And a couple of them are about OpenStack, and a couple of them are about some of the specific Dell technology. So I'll just start throwing questions at you, and you guys can answer them as best you can. Actually, back before we got started, somebody was asking if there's a chance of getting OpenStack to support OpenVZ as a virtualization technology. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. This is a fantastic discussion topic around the community. Obviously, this is a community-driven movement. And any questions, if you actually Google news around OpenStack, you'll see any given day there's a particular technology or particular vendor or particular technology type that's under discussion right now on any given topic. Hyper-V was in the news lately. IPv6 comes up quite a bit. So I probably wouldn't be able to comment in terms of the status on that sort of thing because I don't know what the conversation is right now. I haven't seen that come up very often. But what I'd encourage your audience to do, Liam, is actually go to openstack.org, which is the community site, of which there are links to IRCs and things like that where these conversations happen, and that's where we can find it out. And actually, just as a last point there, I would encourage everybody here, whether they reach out to us on this solution for OpenStack or not, to reach out and understand a little bit about, go and do some of your own research around what's happening with OpenStack. And as you adopt the technology and as you adopt the solution from Dell, be a participant in what's happening in that community. That's a fantastic topic to bring up, and that's where I would recommend you go to learn a little bit more.
Okay, great. Maybe on more specific Dell details. Somebody early, I think it was right when Steve started presenting it. The person references slide 10, basically saying they were describing it. You were describing an entry-level sort of Dell and OpenStack solution. He was asking about some specifics around what the expected IOPS for the storage system is, and whether you're using your compellent technology in that solution.
Yeah, great question. And Steve, I might ask you to chime in on the IOPS, but there are, and the reference architecture will go into detail around that. And whoever that was, drop me an email at openstack@dell.com, and we'll get you connected with that level of documentation. But right now, the reference architecture is primarily made up of PowerEdge-C, and it's got a little bit more of a distributed storage model in that. And I will say that in our first step to market, the team that puts this together, very much an agile team in terms of take something to market, learn from our customers, build features in, and make it a more interactive conversation around how we actually how this solution actually evolves. In regards to compellent and even our broader portfolio, right? I mean, there's EqualLogic technology, Force 10 networking technology. There are a number of custom services that are available. Boomi is actually a very nice cloud technology that we're looking at right now. A lot of those things are under investigation as to how we incorporate it in there. The current solution today, not leveraging compellent, but it is something that we're investigating going forward.
Okay, great.
Yep. And the only thing I'll add, this is Steve, on kind of the IOPS end is, there's no one answer on the IOPS side because IOPS are so dictated by how you set up your RAID set, what kind of transfer, and what your mix looks like of random versus sequential reads. But it's the type of thing that definitely reach out to us, because if you have a use case in mind, and if you're looking for a certain level of performance out of your storage, we can tweak the solution around it, and we can tune the solution around it. So absolutely, we have hard data. I'd just be interested in learning more about what the use case you're looking for is, and we can help you figure out what the right way to put that together is.
Okay, sorry for cutting you off there, Steve. Sorry. I guess somebody was asking a question about, and it was interesting because you did mention the Tri-Stack project, I guess, where it was sort of end user oriented means of trying out some of this technology, and I feel like this is a pretty new set of technology for a lot of people. Somebody was asking about whether you guys have any partnerships with colo or service providers where somebody who might consider using the Crowbar and OpenStack combination could try out that deployment or try playing with that. I mean, is there a test bed where they can try that kind of stuff?
Yeah, this is Joseph. Let me comment on that. So first of all, on the TriStack initiative, it's ideally geared toward community focus and community development. I would encourage us, as Steve said, that would probably be a good first step. I will say that right now, if there's a question around being able to do some sort of proof of concepts, again, drop me an email. We can make that work. I will say at this point right now, we're working on some testbed ideas, and I expect, Liam, the next time we have a webinar, that we'll be able to talk through some of the details of where that is. But we're actively working on that. I know I mentioned a number of other things that we're working on. I would say we'd get some near-term resolution to this project in the very near future. So the next time we talk, we probably have some ideas. We have some alternatives that we can work on in terms of test beds. There's not a public test bed that we have available today, so I'd recommend TriStack. But as we go forward, there will be some other options that are available over the next few months.
Okay. So another specific question about storage. Somebody was just asking if you can remove the SAN component of the solution and then use sort of different grid technology for the storage with distributed file system. Yeah,
actually, I'll make mention that today the solution today does not have a SAN requirement. It is actually all based on the PowerHC servers that have storage local to those systems. And again, those were designed based on use cases that we leveraged in the the hyperscale market in the DCS classic space. So our current solution today does not have a SAN requirement. It's actually all local storage. Beyond that, if there is a SAN requirement that your customers may have, or if there is an alternative to to some of the SAN technologies that may be out there in the community today, that's where our consulting order would be able to come in. There are absolutely options that we can leverage. If you do have a compellent or equal logic SAN that you'd like to leverage, we can absolutely do that. If there's another technology, I would recommend reaching out to us. We actually have a consulting arm that can help you figure out how that should look, and if it's the right decision for your business. We want to make sure that the solutions that we implement with our customers are optimal. You're going to drive the efficiency that DCS is just known for among our customers.
Sorry, I got another question came in just as you were finishing up your answer there. The question is if the storage is local, is it possible to live migrate VMs?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, that's what a lot of the SAN requests that come in for is if there's a SAN requirement, does that allow for live migrations? There are ways to do this, and really what it's going to come down to, and you're talking to the business person, what it's going to come down to is what's the requirement and what's the expectation for the migration, right? Is it what's the volume of migration that you want to do? I will say there are ways to do it, because if you can if you can position the storage as a volume, as a virtual volume, there are ways to do it. I think SAN right now is probably a cleaner route to go. But my final comment is it's TBD. It's something that the community is actively working on right now. Right now we're able to do some level of that using our current infrastructure, but we're still working on a little bit more to try and figure that out.
Okay.
And this is Steve. I'll just add the piece that we say the storage is local, but there still is there's a distinction between kind of the compute nodes and the Swift storage nodes, which are a kind of a distributed grid type of storage technology. So depending on how you're using it, there is some level of migration available. But to Joseph's point, it just depends on how you use it and what the exact use case is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know how much, Steve, you talked about it in. I don't remember if you touched on it, but essentially the nodes that are out there on the 6220 and the 6100. I mean, essentially you can have up to 4 individual nodes in there, but you can actually have, and Steve, keep me honest, but I think you can have up to 12 3.5-inch drives local to that particular chassis, right?
That is correct, and usually what we'll do is we'll split it up and split those between the nodes, but we will have some things, and kind of a peek into our future, some other technologies that will allow you to have some very storage-heavy nodes and some non-storage heavy nodes actually in the same chassis, so that you're using that space right. But exactly even to that point, there is a distinction between where the data is stored and where your compute's done, so there you can kind of move around and still have access to that same data.
Okay. I have a couple more questions, and I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, so I might also suggest if this, because I noticed there's a couple people who had quite a few questions. Those are probably cases where you should reach out to Joseph directly or Steve and sort of have a conversation with them, outside of the webinar. Not to discourage you from submitting questions, because they are great questions, but just that if you have a lot, I'm sure a conversation outside the webinar would be helpful. Anyway, a couple more questions before we wrap up. Somebody was asking whether there are any control panels that integrate into the solution to sort of assist with the hosting implementation, similar to the example that they give is OnApp. I wonder if that's maybe something that somebody else might be working on somewhere within the OpenStack community. But if you have any insight into that, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few answers there. There are some dashboards that the OpenStack community is actually working on themselves, and I think the project is codenamed Horizon. And you can actually go to, there are URLs off of the OpenStack.org site that you can get to that actually get you a view into what that looks like. The Crowbar interface also has a UI, but it's much more oriented around the infrastructure that you're looking to deploy. In terms of applications and things like that, absolutely the ecosystem, the partner community is the best place to go look at portals and things like that, and for a front end. A couple of user portals that I can think of right off the top of my head are companies like RightScale and Stratus are people that do things in that space. I don't know of a partner that is specifically gearing a dashboard, a control panel specifically for the web hosting space, but that is I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you're looking for there. That might be something that we'd be interested in looking at as well.
Okay, cool. So we're right at 3 o'clock now. We started a few minutes late, so let's say one more question, and then we'll sort of wrap things up. But somebody was asking about whether you sort of provide for automatic or automated failover between nodes or self-healing within the environment.
Yeah, I would go as far as the continuous integration kind of role that the Crowbar plays. Crowbar, like I said, the initial use case was go from bare metal to a functioning OpenStack multi-node cloud, in a matter of hours. That was the original use case. But as we started doing BIOS configuration, RAID configuration, a lot of those things also became an update feature, right? So as new systems got added to the environment, as if something were to happen catastrophically and things were erased, Crowbar is able to recognize these things, and through a matter of proposals and scripts, are able to go and actually execute on automated scripts that actually end up bringing those nodes, whether it's new or problematic, back into compliance with how the system is supposed to work. So that exists out there. I want to be careful in terms of self-healing. Those are very heavy terms. So I want to make sure we set expectations correctly. It essentially can be set up in a way that Crowbar can be responsive based on the image that you originally put out there. But I would also add that this is also something where we're looking at the community and trying to figure out how we can better enable that. There are use cases beyond OpenStack that Crowbar can help in that case as well. So there's some level of recovery that already exists in Crowbar. With some skill set around Chef, you can actually enhance that. And there are obviously bits that you can set to have Crowbar respond in a certain way. So some of that does exist. We're actually looking at our own roadmap as well as the open source community to help us figure out how we get, what features in that space do we add, and how we actually get the open source community to help us develop some of those capabilities for Crowbar. So some of that does exist today, yes.
And I will chime in that since there's been a couple of questions about storage, that is something that is integrated into Swift. It is by nature a little bit redundant in how it stores the data. So it has a number of failure domains. So once a node goes down, it has multiple copies, and then once a new node is installed or once that node is repaired, it automatically does repair it on the storage end. So on the storage end, it's kind of built into the tools that are already there.
Okay, guys. Well, we're at a great time to end. If it's all right with you guys, I've got a little bit of wrapping up I can do. I don't know if you guys wanted to get to anything else, or if you feel like we've covered it.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I'll just close by saying very briefly that I'd encourage everybody to reach out, learn a little bit more about what we're doing. Dell.com/OpenStack. If you'd like to learn more about what we're doing with Crowbar, you can also check out Dell.com/Crowbar. And I would encourage anybody that had questions that maybe didn't get answered, drop us an email at openstack@dell.com. We are fairly active on that account. Happy to enable you in any way. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, I would also like to thank everyone for attending and for submitting questions. And I'd like to specifically mention that we got a lot of great questions today, and I think that was a good indication of how interesting this subject is for everyone, and how front of mind this is for a lot of hosting providers. So in that light, I would like to thank Joseph and Steve for offering up some pretty great insight into the topic. And thanks, everyone, and have a great day.